God's power can do incredible things, and one prophet was chosen to show us just how amazing it can be. Meet Elijah, a man called by God to perform miraculous deeds and guide his people in tough times. From bringing fire from heaven to helping a poor widow, Elijah's life is full of wonders. But along with these amazing moments, he faced great challenges and strong enemies. Elijah's story unfolds in the 9th century BCE, a key period in the history of ancient Israel. At this time, Israel was divided into two separate kingdoms, the northern kingdom called Israel and the southern kingdom known as Judah. This split happened after the reign of King Solomon, creating different challenges for each kingdom. In the northern kingdom of Israel, King Ahab ruled during Elijah's life. Ahab was married to Jezebel, a woman who brought many harmful influences to the people of Israel. Under their leadership, the Israelites started to worship foreign gods, especially Baal and Asherah, instead of remaining faithful to Yahweh, the God of Israel. This shift was significant, as it led many people to abandon their traditional beliefs and practices. The political situation during this time was complex. Ahab was involved in conflicts with neighboring nations like Syria, which added to the turmoil in Israel. While he focused on forming alliances and fighting wars, the spiritual life of the nation suffered. Ahab and Jezebel's actions turned many Israelites away from their faith in Yahweh, leading to a decline in moral values. This is where prophets like Elijah became essential. God chose them to deliver messages to the people and the leaders. Prophets were seen as the voice of God, calling the nation to repentance and urging them to return to their faith. Elijah's mission was particularly crucial because he confronted the growing worship of Baal, challenging both the king and the prophets of Baal directly. His life was filled with dramatic events that showcased God's power and authority, especially in contrast to the false gods that many Israelites were worshipping. One of the most famous stories about Elijah is his showdown with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. This event illustrated the stark difference between Yahweh and the false gods. Elijah called for a contest to see whose god could bring down fire from heaven. While the prophets of Baal danced and shouted for hours, nothing happened. But when Elijah called on Yahweh, fire came down immediately, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, and even the stones. This powerful moment demonstrated that Yahweh was the true God and showed the people the futility of their idol worship. The role of prophets in ancient Israel was vital. They were not just predictors of the future. They provided guidance and warnings. In times of trouble or moral decline, prophets like Elijah helped steer the nation back on track. They reminded the people of their promises to God and encouraged them to follow his laws. The importance of Elijah and other prophets cannot be underestimated. They were crucial in maintaining the spiritual health of the nation. Without their voices, the people might have strayed even further into idol worship and away from their covenant with God. Elijah's life was a testimony to the struggle between faithfulness to Yahweh and the temptations of surrounding cultures that worshipped other gods. Elijah originated from a small town called Tishbe, which is located in the region of Gilead, east of the Jordan River. Although Tishbe is not mentioned frequently in historical texts, it was part of the northern kingdom of Israel during a time of great turmoil. The area was known for its rugged terrain and harsh conditions, which may have shaped Elijah's character and resilience. Growing up in such a challenging environment likely influenced his later prophetic mission. Doesn't that sound divine? From a young age, Elijah displayed signs of being set apart for a special purpose. The Bible does not provide much detail about his early life, but the lack of information allows us to imagine his upbringing in a society that was increasingly turning away from the worship of Yahweh. As a child in Tishbe, Elijah would have witnessed the idolatry that began to permeate the lives of the Israelites, especially under the influence of kings like Ahab. This background may have planted the seeds of his future calling as he became acutely aware of the spiritual decline around him. Isn't it amazing how God works? The turning point in Elijah's life came when God called him to be a prophet. This calling was marked by a profound experience that set him on a path of divine service. In 1 Kings 17, we see the moment he emerges on the biblical scene as he boldly approaches King Ahab and declares that there will be no rain or dew in the land except at his word. This declaration was not just a warning, but a direct challenge to Ahab's idolatrous practices. By proclaiming a drought, Elijah was effectively demonstrating that Yahweh, not Baal, controlled the weather and the land. This moment marked the beginning of his prophetic ministry and revealed his unwavering faith in God. What a powerful statement of faith! Despite his strong calling, Elijah faced numerous challenges in the early days of his ministry. One of the first significant trials was the intense hostility he encountered from King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. As they promoted the worship of Baal, they viewed Elijah as a threat to their authority and religious practices. After declaring the drought, Elijah had to flee for his life, illustrating the dangers that prophets often faced in standing up for their beliefs. He sought refuge by the brook Cherith, where God provided for him through ravens that brought him food. This experience not only showcased God's provision, but also helped to strengthen Elijah's faith during a time of uncertainty. Doesn't God always provide? Elijah's early encounters also included meeting the widow of Zarephath. During his time hiding from Ahab, he arrives in her town, where he finds her gathering sticks to prepare a final meal for herself and her son. In a moment of desperation, Elijah asked her to make him a small loaf of bread first, promising that her flour and oil would not run out until the rain returned. Miraculously, the widow's supply did not deplete, reinforcing Elijah's role as a prophet of miracles. This encounter also highlights the theme of faith, as both Elijah and the widow had to trust in God's provision during a time of scarcity. What an incredible demonstration of faith! Through these early experiences, Elijah developed his prophetic identity and learned to rely on God's guidance. He faced significant challenges and threats, but each trial only deepened his commitment to fulfilling his divine calling. His origins in Tishbe, coupled with his initial encounters, laid the foundation for a remarkable ministry that would impact Israel and beyond. As Elijah navigated the complexities of being a prophet in a tumultuous time, his unwavering faith in God became a defining characteristic of his life and mission. Elijah's first major act as a prophet was predicting a drought in Israel, a bold declaration that served as a divine judgment against the nation's rampant idolatry. In 1 Kings 17 verse 1, Elijah stands before King Ahab and declares, "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word." This prediction was not just a weather forecast. It was a clear message from God to the people of Israel, signaling his displeasure with their turning away from him to worship Baal. The impact of this drought on Israel was profound. Crops failed, livestock suffered, and the people faced severe hardship. Water scarcity became a pressing issue, causing fear and desperation among the Israelites. This drought lasted for 3.5 years, significantly altering the landscape of the nation and bringing the people face to face with the consequences of their choices. Doesn't that highlight the seriousness of turning away from God? The drought was more than a punishment. It was an opportunity for the people to reflect on their lives and the direction they were heading. It forced them to confront the reality of their spiritual state. With no rain, many began to realize the futility of relying on Baal, the supposed god of fertility and rain whom they had been worshipping. This time of drought served as a wake-up call for the nation, illustrating the stark reality that true sustenance comes from the God of Israel, not from idols. Isn't it remarkable how God uses circumstances? The declaration of the drought set the stage for Elijah's further miracles and his ongoing mission to call the people back to Yahweh. As the situation grew dire, the necessity for divine intervention became increasingly apparent. The drought was a crucial backdrop against which the following events of Elijah's ministry would unfold. During the drought, God instructed Elijah to go to Zarephath, a town in Sidon, where he would find a widow who would provide for him. When Elijah arrived, he encountered the widow gathering sticks to prepare a final meal for herself and her son, as they had only enough flour and oil left to make one last meal. Elijah asked her to make a small loaf for him first, before preparing something for herself and her son. In a moment of desperation, the widow complied with Elijah's request. As she made the meal, a miracle occurred. Her flour and oil did not run out. This continued until the drought ended, allowing her, her son, and Elijah to eat throughout the challenging times. This incredible act of provision highlighted God's faithfulness and care in desperate circumstances. What a beautiful example of trust. The significance of this miracle extends beyond mere sustenance. It demonstrated God's ability to provide abundantly, even in seemingly impossible situations. By choosing a widow in a foreign land, God showed that his mercy and provision were not limited to the Israelites, but extended to all who demonstrated faith. This encounter illustrated a crucial theme in Elijah's ministry: God's concern for the marginalized and vulnerable. Additionally, the widow's faith was tested and ultimately rewarded. She went from a place of despair to experiencing God's miraculous provision, which also strengthened her faith in the God of Israel. This miracle served as a powerful reminder that God can turn our desperate situations into testimonies of his greatness. Isn't it inspiring to see how faith leads to miracles? On the other hand, the most dramatic and well-known event in Elijah's ministry is undoubtedly the showdown on Mount Carmel. This confrontation was a direct challenge to the prophets of Baal, who had been leading Israel astray. Elijah called for a gathering of the people to witness a contest between himself and 450 prophets of Baal to determine who was the true God. Elijah proposed that both he and the prophets of Baal prepare a bull for sacrifice and call upon their respective gods to send down fire from heaven to consume the offering. The prophets of Baal went first, calling on Baal from morning until noon, shouting, dancing, and even cutting themselves in a frantic effort to get a response. However, no fire came, and they were met with silence. Doesn't that illustrate the futility of idol worship? When it was Elijah's turn, he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been neglected, and then drenched the offering and the altar with water, making it impossible for fire to ignite naturally. Elijah prayed to God, asking him to show the people that he was the true God. In a powerful display of divine intervention, fire descended from heaven, consuming the offering, the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trench around the altar. The people fell on their faces and proclaimed, "The Lord, He is God." This miraculous event turned the hearts of the Israelites back to Yahweh, demonstrating his undeniable power and authority over false gods. What a stunning demonstration of God's might. The significance of the showdown on Mount Carmel cannot be overstated. It was a pivotal moment that reignited the people's faith and showcased the truth of God's sovereignty. This event also served as a decisive turning point in Elijah's ministry, solidifying his role as a prophet of God. The defeat of the prophets of Baal was a clear indication that Yahweh was the one true God, and it marked a significant victory for Elijah and the faithful remnant of Israel. In addition to the major events already discussed, Elijah performed several other notable miracles that further illustrated God's power and care. One such miracle occurred when he raised the widow of Zarephath's son from the dead. After the boy fell ill and died, the grieving widow turned to Elijah for help. Elijah took the child, prayed earnestly to God, and laid himself on the boy 3 times. Miraculously, God heard Elijah's prayer, and the child came back to life. What an incredible display of God's compassion and power. Elijah also experienced miraculous food provision during the drought. While staying at the widow's home, God continued to provide for Elijah, the widow, and her son through the unending supply of flour and oil. This ongoing miracle not only sustained them physically, but also served as a reminder of God's faithfulness. Isn't it amazing how God meets our needs? Additionally, Elijah performed other minor miracles, such as calling down fire from heaven more than once and ensuring that the Israelites would remember God's power. Each miracle served to reinforce the truth of God's existence and his willingness to intervene in the lives of his people. These events were not merely acts of power, they were demonstrations of God's love, reminding the people of Israel that he was always present and active in their lives. Elijah's life and ministry were marked by extraordinary divine interventions that served to remind the Israelites of their covenant with God. Through his miracles, Elijah exemplified faithfulness and courage in the face of adversity, standing as a beacon of hope during a time of spiritual darkness. His encounters with the people of Israel showed that God is not only a God of power but also a God of compassion, always ready to provide for his people and guide them back to the truth. Elijah's life as a prophet was full of conflicts and challenges, especially in his confrontations with King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Ahab and Jezebel represented the corruption and idol worship that had taken over Israel. Under Ahab's leadership, the people turned away from worshiping Yahweh and began to follow the false gods Baal and Asherah. The prophets of these idols were celebrated, leading the Israelites further away from their true God. In this situation, Elijah, as a prophet of the Lord, found himself standing against powerful leaders who were leading the nation into spiritual darkness. Doesn't that show how brave true faith can be? After Elijah's dramatic victory over the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, where he proved that Yahweh was the one true God, things took a dangerous turn. Jezebel, furious over the defeat of her prophets, threatened to kill Elijah, promising that she would make his life just like the lives of the prophets he had executed. This threat filled Elijah with fear and despair. How could a man who had just witnessed such an incredible miracle now feel so frightened? It's a reminder that even the strongest believers can struggle with doubt and fear when faced with tough situations. Fearing for his life, Elijah ran into the wilderness. He traveled for a day, feeling hopeless and alone. Eventually, he sat down under a broom tree, wishing he could die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." This moment shows how deep Elijah's struggle was. Even after standing firm in his faith, the pressure from Jezebel made him feel isolated and defeated. Isn't it profound to think that even great prophets face such human emotions? Exhausted and discouraged, Elijah fell asleep under the tree. But then, an angel of the Lord woke him up, providing him with food and water. This wasn't just about feeding him physically. It was God's way of saying Elijah wasn't alone and that he still had a purpose. After eating and drinking, Elijah gained enough strength to travel for 40 days and nights to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. When he reached Horeb, Elijah went into a cave and spent the night there. In this sacred place, God asked him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" This question wasn't meant to judge Elijah, but to invite him to share his heart. Elijah opened up about his fears and frustrations, expressing how he felt completely alone in his fight against the corrupt leaders of Israel. He believed he was the only prophet left, and that everyone else had turned away from God. Doesn't it show how close God is to his prophets? God told Elijah to stand on the mountain and be in his presence. While Elijah stood there, a powerful wind tore through the mountains, breaking the rocks apart, but the Lord wasn't in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but God wasn't in the earthquake either. Then came a fire, but God was not in the fire. Finally, there was a gentle whisper, the still small voice. It was in this quiet moment that God revealed himself to Elijah, reminding him that his presence doesn't always come with loud and dramatic events. Isn't it amazing how God often speaks in gentle whispers? This encounter had a profound impact on Elijah's understanding of God's presence and his ways. After feeling isolated and overwhelmed, Elijah learned that he wasn't alone in his faith. God revealed to him that there were still 7,000 people in Israel who had not turned their backs on him and worshipped Baal. This revelation was vital for Elijah's renewal, as it reminded him that he was part of a larger community of believers. Knowing that others shared his commitment to God gave Elijah a renewed sense of hope and purpose. God also had important tasks for Elijah. He instructed him to anoint new leaders, which was essential for guiding the nation of Israel back to faithfulness. Among these tasks was the selection of a successor named Elisha. This decision ensured that Elijah's prophetic mission would not end with him. Instead, it would continue through Elisha, who would carry on the work of calling the people back to God. This moment of reassurance and commissioning marked a turning point in Elijah's life, as he embraced his role in God's ongoing plan and the importance of mentorship in faith. Elijah's conflicts with Ahab and Jezebel, along with his flight to Horeb, show the deep challenges faced by those who stand for what is right. These experiences illustrate the reality of human emotions, the struggles of spiritual battles, and the compassionate nature of God, who is there to support us in our darkest moments. Through all of Elijah's challenges, we learn that even in tough times, God is present, ready to provide comfort, guidance, and a fresh start. Elijah's legacy as a prophet is significant and far-reaching, impacting future generations of prophets, particularly his successor, Elisha. After Elijah was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elisha took up the mantle of prophecy, continuing the mission of calling Israel back to God. Elijah had mentored Elisha, instilling in him a deep faith and a passion for God's work. This relationship between the two prophets demonstrates the importance of mentorship in faith. Isn't it inspiring how one person's legacy can shape another's path? Elisha performed many miracles that echoed those of Elijah, such as healing the sick, raising the dead, and providing for those in need. Through Elisha's ministry, the spirit and mission of Elijah lived on, reinforcing the idea that God's work continues through those who follow faithfully. This connection between Elijah and Elisha shows that God's purposes endure even after individuals are gone, and it highlights the importance of passing down faith and spiritual wisdom from one generation to the next. Doesn't it remind you of how faith can be shared? Elijah's influence extends beyond the prophets of Israel and into Jewish tradition and eschatology. In Judaism, Elijah is seen as a forerunner of the Messiah. Jewish tradition holds that Elijah will return before the coming of the Messiah to herald this significant event. This belief is rooted in the prophetic book of Malachi, where God promises that he will send Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. This expectation of Elijah's return has led to various customs, such as leaving a cup of wine for him at Passover and opening the door for him during the Seder meal. Isn't it fascinating how Elijah's role is woven into the fabric of Jewish tradition? In addition to his role in Jewish thought, Elijah is also referenced in the New Testament. John the Baptist is often considered to embody the spirit and mission of Elijah, fulfilling the prophecy of his return as a precursor to Jesus. In Matthew 17:10-13, Jesus himself refers to John as Elijah, indicating that John came in the spirit of Elijah to prepare the way for the Lord. This connection further cements Elijah's legacy, showing how his prophetic mission resonates through the ages. Moreover, during the transfiguration of Jesus, Elijah appears alongside Moses, representing the law and the prophets, highlighting his importance in the overall narrative of the Bible. Elijah's legacy is a powerful testament to the enduring nature of faith and God's call on our lives. His unwavering commitment to the truth and his profound experiences with God serve as an inspiration to both ancient and modern believers. The impact of his life and ministry can still be felt today, encouraging people to stand firm in their faith, to mentor others, and to recognize the ongoing work of God in the world. Elijah's story reminds us that even in the face of great challenges, God's presence and power are always at work, guiding and shaping the course of history through his faithful servants. Doesn't that highlight the significance of obedience to God? The life of Elijah teaches us powerful lessons about faith and obedience to God. Throughout his ministry, Elijah demonstrated unwavering trust in God's promises, even when circumstances seemed dire. When he predicted a drought as a divine judgment, he acted solely on God's command, showing us that true faith often requires stepping out into the unknown. Elijah's commitment to following God, regardless of the challenges he faced, serves as a reminder that faith isn't just about belief. it's also about action. Doesn't it inspire you to trust God more? Elijah's story also highlights the importance of courage in the face of opposition. He boldly confronted King Ahab and the prophets of Baal, unafraid to stand up for the truth. This kind of courage is essential for anyone seeking to live out their faith authentically. Even when Jezebel threatened his life, Elijah didn't back down from his mission. Instead, he continued to speak God's truth, demonstrating that true bravery often comes with risks. We can learn from Elijah that standing firm in our beliefs can inspire others and bring about change, even when we face significant challenges. Isn't it empowering to know that we can make a difference? Understanding divine providence and miracles is another key lesson from Elijah's life. His experiences, such as the miraculous provision for the widow at Zarephath and the fire that consumed his offering on Mount Carmel, show us that God is deeply involved in the lives of his people. These miracles were not just displays of power, they were acts of love and care, reminding us that God sees our needs and provides for us in ways we might not expect. Even when Elijah felt alone and hopeless, God met him in his despair, showing that divine support often comes in the most unexpected ways. Doesn't it fill you with hope to see how God works in our lives? The lessons from Elijah's life are timeless and relevant for believers today. His faith and obedience remind us that trusting God means taking risks and stepping out in faith, even when we can't see the whole picture. His courage encourages us to stand firm in our beliefs, regardless of the opposition we may face. His experiences with divine providence assure us that God is always present and actively working in our lives, providing for our needs and guiding us through difficult times. Each of these lessons invites us to deepen our relationship with God and trust in His perfect plan, no matter the circumstances we encounter. Elijah's life is a powerful testament to faith, obedience, and the miraculous workings of God. Throughout his ministry, we've seen key themes emerge, including the importance of trusting God even in dire situations, the courage required to stand up against evil, and the incredible ways God provides for those who remain faithful. From predicting the drought to calling down fire from heaven, Elijah's miracles reveal not only God's power, but also His deep care for His people. Doesn't it make you appreciate the wonders of divine intervention? The relevance of Elijah's story resonates with us today in many ways. In a world where we often face challenges and opposition to our beliefs, Elijah's example encourages us to remain steadfast in our faith. His courage reminds us that standing up for what is right can lead to transformative outcomes, both personally and within our communities. Moreover, his experiences of God's provision remind us that we are never truly alone. God is always present, guiding and sustaining us through our trials. Doesn't it give you hope to know that we can lean on God during tough times? And something is interesting about Elijah. Elijah is a fascinating figure not only in the Bible, but also in various religious traditions and texts. One fun fact is that Elijah is believed to never have died. Instead, he was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind. This miraculous event has led to a belief in Judaism that he will return before the coming of the Messiah. In Jewish tradition, Elijah is known as the Angel of the Covenant and plays a vital role in the Passover Seder. A cup of wine is set aside for him, symbolizing hope for redemption. Interestingly, Elijah is also mentioned in the Quran, where he is referred to as Elias. He is regarded as a prophet who called the people to worship the one true God, similar to his role in the Bible. Additionally, Elijah's story has inspired numerous artistic representations throughout history, from paintings to operas, illustrating his enduring impact on culture. In the New Testament, Elijah appears during the transfiguration of Jesus alongside Moses, highlighting his significance as a prophet who bridges the Old and New Testaments. These fascinating aspects of Elijah's legacy show how his influence transcends time and tradition. The lessons from Elijah's life are incredibly relevant today, especially as many people navigate a world that often challenges their faith. One of the most significant lessons is the importance of standing up for one's beliefs, even in a secular society. Just as Elijah boldly confronted the worship of false gods in Israel, individuals today are called to stand firm in their faith amidst peer pressure, societal norms, or even workplace challenges. This requires courage and conviction, reminding us that true faith often involves making difficult choices. Elijah's life offers valuable lessons on how to cope with fear and uncertainty. After his spectacular victory over the prophets of Baal, which showcased God's power, Elijah faced a serious threat from Queen Jezebel. Instead of feeling victorious, he ran away in fear, feeling alone and discouraged. This reaction is relatable. Many people today encounter situations that can trigger fear or anxiety, whether it's losing a job, facing health challenges, or dealing with personal difficulties. Elijah's story reminds us that experiencing fear is a normal part of being human, especially when faced with tough situations. During his darkest moments, God provided comfort and reassurance, showing Elijah that he was not alone. This experience teaches us the importance of seeking God during our struggles. Prayer and reflection can be powerful tools to help us find strength and clarity in the chaos of life. Just as Elijah turned to God in his time of need, we can do the same. By reaching out in prayer, we can gain a sense of peace and direction, reminding us that God is always there to support us, even when we feel overwhelmed. Lastly, mentorship is a key takeaway from Elijah's relationship with Elisha. In faith communities, mentoring relationships can help guide and support individuals in their spiritual journeys. Sharing experiences and wisdom can empower others to grow in their faith and develop their relationship with God. Whether it's through formal mentorship programs or simply being available to offer advice and encouragement, fostering these connections can help strengthen communities and nurture future leaders. By applying these lessons from Elijah's life, individuals can navigate their faith journeys with confidence, courage, and a sense of community. In the life of Elijah, it becomes clear that his story is not just a historical account, but a source of inspiration for anyone seeking to deepen their faith. There are many other biblical figures whose lives teach us valuable lessons about trusting God, facing adversity, and recognizing His presence in our lives. Each story has unique insights that can help us grow in our faith and understanding of God's incredible love and grace. So, let's continue to seek out these narratives, allowing them to guide and inspire us on our spiritual journeys. Thank you for joining this journey through Elijah's incredible story. If you found this content inspiring, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe for more fascinating biblical content. Before leaving, it would be great to hear from you. What aspect of Elijah's story intrigued you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts and insights are valuable and contribute to a vibrant discussion within this community. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and hope to see everyone in the next video.